And welcome back. Well, Lee and I are going to continue our road trip adventure now by talking about one of the other things that we did while we were up on the Gold Coast. And that, of course, is one of Australia's biggest theatre shows, talking about Heartland at the Australian Outback Spectacular. Now, Australia's Outback Spectacular has been running now, I'm thinking for nearly 20 years, I'm guessing, like around that mark. But the shows change fairly frequently, and the show that's on there at the moment is called Heartland, which I'm guessing is a little bit of a take on the TV series that you watch as well. But it's set in Australia, and it's about a struggling farming district that hasn't had rain in years. There's love and romance as part of the story, but I'll let Lee tell you a little bit more about the story. But this is basically theatre on a grand, epic stage. Like it's like a sporting arena, just about live with horses, dogs, cows, and just about everything else you can imagine. Was there sheep? I can't remember. But this time around, Lee and I did something a little bit different. We actually also did the tour that took us backstage as well. So not only did we get the dinner and the show, but we also got to go backstage. But we'll start with you, Lee. What did you want to talk about with Heartland at Australia's Outback Spectacular?
Well, I think we'll talk about first the backstage talk, which you can pay extra for. So if you get a chance to do that and you haven't done it before, I think it's well worth it. Now, our tour guide was named Verity.
Yes.
And I have to say, she was amazing in telling us a lot of information and just being even patient with her whole group, like, walking around and, catching up and making sure everyone was sticking together. But she gave a lot of information about how the show works. So anything from costumes that have LED lights in them and have to be stored appropriately and hung up, and as they're coming back out on horses, they need to be helped into those costumes or the jackets. That was really interesting to hear. So they needed technicians to help put those costumes on them, and so that they could ride back out into the arena all lit up. And of course, seeing some of the horses backstage was a bonus, and seeing them up close. And I guess just some information about one of the horses called Diamond.
That's right.
And there's more than one horse that they use during the night as the star. They swap them over, and I guess that's, really to make sure that they're caring for their animals and not overworking them or anything. And so one horse has the diamond naturally on their forehead, and the others get it painted on with horse makeup. So,
and we also learned how different horses are trained for different things. So some horses are really good at allowing an actress on their back for a stunt. Others are, as she said, some of them are older, so they just do the bit where they gallop around the arena now as well. And we learnt that they have a farm for Australia's Outback Spectacular, and that the horses actually get changed over
regularly.
So that some horses are out in the paddocks for a couple of months at a time, while the others are doing their stuff in the arena. But they all go back to a little mini farm every day out of the stables. So
it was just great hearing how they're looked after, by vets, and just the love that the cast have for their horses as well. You could see the real connection and the care that they have for them.
And that was another interesting part that I felt, I don't know if you did too, but they hire people that are good with horses that can be trained to act and sing.
Yes.
Rather than hiring actors and singers that can be trained to work with horses.
Yes. And as you can imagine, we'll call them actresses or actors, however, really, they're performers.
Yep.
But firstly, they are definitely the horse people.
Yep.
I have to say that, number one. And of course, each person has their own specialty too. So one might be
whip cracking.
Yeah, whip cracking. One might be the one that does the stunts on the back of the horses. Now that's not something everybody can do. You have to be really well trained for those kinds of things for the stunts. And so a lot of them have a great background with the horses. So yeah, I was quite impressed with hearing how they employ people and how people love to stay on working there because it's such a great atmosphere and things like that. But in terms of the actual show, I think some of the highlights for me is there's a real storyline. So obviously, and some intertwining storylines. So you've got a family that's struggling through a drought, basically. But then you've got the relationship storylines going on through that. I mean, how the drought affects the family as a whole, but then how it affects individuals within the family as well. And then, of course, you've got a love story going through that too. Now, one of the things I love is the projected images, computer images that light up the whole floor area of the arena to have water, a river and a bank, and on the back wall a waterfall. And of course there's lots of animals. And you can probably hear our dog in the background now. She likes to be part of every show. She's talking to everyone now.
She's telling everybody that she could be part of Outback Spectacular because she is a Blue Heeler cross-border collie.
Yes, and there was a beautiful dog in the show.
A Kelpie.
And yes. And of course the beautiful horses, cattle, and yes, there were some sheep as well. So you see live images, but then you also see images on the back screen. And I think the blend of that was perfect.
Yeah, it's one of the things I also learnt as well going backstage was that the cast are all responsible for the horses as well. So after they finish the performance every night, it's up to the cast member who's been assigned that horse for the night to make sure that the horse is fed, that they're washed, all the sweat is washed off them before they go back to the paddock of a night time. So there's lots of things like that as well that you learn. But for me, like, I know a lot of people might not put the show at Outback Spectacular up as a theatre show, but it is. And it's like one of the biggest theatre shows that you could imagine. Like, there's acting and, of course, like you said, there's trick riding and things like that. But, like, even the music that they're using in the show at the moment, a lot of it is composed by their own composers. But they do use music from people like Brooke McClymont, Lee Kernaghan, Jimmy Barnes, John Williamson. Like, there is so much music that goes into it. But I actually think the show this time around, the way it looked, was better than the show that I saw there last time. I think the projections and everything onto the actual arena. And if you're looking at our website, subcultureentertainment.com, I actually have some photos that I took on the night of the projections and everything like that. So make sure you have a look at that. But it brings the stage together in a whole new way. Like, basically the stage is a dirt arena, and all of a sudden it's transformed into like a beautiful gorge with a waterfall. Another time it becomes the Rainbow Serpent, and then that turns into a river.
You see dolphins and whales actually at at the very beginning for the Welcome to Country.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. And I know a lot of foodies listen to this show too, Lee. So what did you think of the food that you get as part of the deal watching this show?
Yeah, well, it is fantastic because you do eat while you're watching the show. And so you can have a choice of a couple of different meals. Of course, if you're vegetarian, there is a choice. I think we had a frittata at the start. And then we chose steak with the veggies, and then apple pie at the end.
The kakadu jam is so with good. That's part of it.
Yeah, with the pie. But it really has that home cooked taste to it, and it is quality food.
And unlimited drinks all night.
Yeah, well, when we say drinks, that was You had a choice of, I think, beer or soft drink, and water, of course.
Just 4X, because 4X sponsors them. Yeah.
That's right. But well worth the value, considering you're getting a 3-course meal. You've got all these actors involved and stunts people, horse riders, but not forgetting the upkeep of all the animals that they have and making sure that they're looking after them exceptionally well. So I guess having done the backstage tour as well as seeing the actual show, I actually thought that really it's a cheap night considering the amount of cost that must go into it. And yeah, obviously there's a lot of props and things for upkeep as well. But especially you always want to know that the animals are 100% being cared for and not overworked. And to hear that they used a number of horses for the same role during the night to make sure that they're looked after well, that was just really encouraging to me. But yeah, to see live animals on a stage, you don't see that often these days. And so I 100% recommend going.
Definitely. And I should say one of the other highlights was too, I won't say how they do it, but a helicopter comes into the arena as well for one part of the show. Just going back, doing a little bit of fact checking on myself, I just did a little bit of a search while Lee was talking then. Australia's Outback Spectacular started 17 years ago in 2006, so that's nearly 18 years ago now. And the current director of the show that is there at the moment is internationally known director Nigel Jamieson, who has worked on amazing opera productions like Carmen and Dead Man Walking, but he's also the man responsible for DreamWorks' How to Train Your Dragon Arena production as well. So that tells you a little bit about the people behind them. I also had a little look before too while Lee was talking, and there's about 2 producers that are involved, 2 composers, I should say, that are involved with the show at the moment, and also a pretty big creative team as well. So I definitely recommend going and seeing Heartland, Australia at the Australian Outback Spectacular. I'll get it out eventually if you're going up to the Gold Coast. But we'll be back in a moment on the show with more. But yeah, Lee and I both recommend that you go and check out Heartland at the Australian Outback Spectacular up on the Gold Coast at the moment.